I cooked for my family my entire life, and then my daughter treated me like the help. But I had one choice left. Welcome back to Velma's Stories, where we share true tales of courage, betrayal, and the kind of quiet revenge only life itself can deliver. My name is Evelyn Hensley. I'm 78 years old, and this is the story of the evening my own daughter's words broke something inside me forever. Before I begin, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, from what city are you listening to my story today? I love knowing where my words travel. And now, let me take you back to the night I walked out of my daughter's house with a roast beef in my arms and walked back into my own life. I was born in a small town in Ohio, where everybody knew your middle name and your grandmother's maiden name. Life was simple then: church on Sundays, school plays in the old gymnasium, picnics by the river. I grew up believing that family was the anchor of everything, that no matter how the world shifted, your people would protect you, respect you, hold you close. That belief carried me through 78 years. Through marriage, widowhood, raising 2 daughters, and watching my grandchildren come into the world. Through every kitchen I cleaned, every meal I cooked, every holiday I decorated until my fingers ached. My life had been about service, about giving, and I never thought to ask if anyone would ever give back. But the truth is, when you've spent decades putting everyone first, people start to forget you have a place at the table at all. The night it all came crashing down was supposed to be special. Julia, my eldest daughter, had invited friends and her husband's colleagues for dinner. She insisted I move in with her a year ago, saying, "It'll be easier, Mom. We'll take care of you." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. That morning, I marinated a roast beef for 5 hours. I rubbed it with garlic, rosemary, a splash of red wine, the way Walter, my late husband, always loved it. By evening, the oven had worked its magic. The house smelled like home, the kind of smell that makes neighbors jealous and children hover in the kitchen. The guests arrived. Laughter, chatter, the clink of glasses. Julia floated around like the perfect hostess, greeting everyone with charm. I stood quietly in the background, carrying trays, refilling drinks, making sure every plate was full. That's what I had always done best: make sure everyone else was happy. When it was time to serve the roast, I carried the heavy pan into the dining room. The juices still bubbled, steam curling upward like a promise of comfort. I set it down in the center of the long table, proud in a small, private way. And then it happened. "Mom," Julia said, almost casually, as she handed a plate to one of her guests. "You'll eat after everyone else." The words didn't come like a slap. They came like frost, slow, creeping, splitting something deep inside me. She said it without malice, without a hint of shame, like it was natural, like I was staff. I looked at her, at my daughter, the child I had carried and soothed and sacrificed for. I looked at her guests, already digging in, laughing, unaware. I looked at the roast beef I had tended all day, and I felt invisible. No one gasped, no one objected. Not even my grandson lifted his eyes from his plate. I was simply erased from the scene I had created. So I did the only thing my body seemed to know how to do. I picked up the hot pan, felt its weight burn through the thin foil, and carried it out of the room. Past Julia, past the laughter, past the front door, out into the night. If you think that was the end of it, you couldn't be more wrong. Because what I did next didn't just shock Julia. It changed the rest of my life. The night air hit my face like a baptism. Cool, crisp, unbothered by the noise I had just left behind. I walked those 3 blocks back to my own house, or what was left of it, with the roasting pan balanced in my arms. The foil burned the tender skin of my palms, but I didn't loosen my grip. Every step felt heavier and lighter at the same time. Not a single voice followed me. No. Mom, wait! No hurried footsteps on the porch. Just the dull scrape of forks and knives continuing behind the door I had closed. By the time I reached my front steps, the roast juices had soaked through the foil, staining the towel I had wrapped around it. I pushed the door open and stepped into silence. It had been months since I'd heard silence in my own space. Julia had insisted I leave this little house for her bigger one. "It's better this way, Mom. We'll take care of you," she'd said. She called it care. I knew now it was control. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon soap and dust, like a room that hadn't been cooked in for too long. I set the heavy pan down on the table, the sound ringing through the emptiness. Then I opened the old oak cabinet, reached for my favorite plate, the one with the faded blue flowers along the rim, and placed a slice of roast beef on it. Steam curled upward, carrying the aroma of hours of love and labor. I sat down. For the first time in a very long time, I ate alone, and it was good. Every bite was tender, rich, seasoned just right. I savored it, not swallowing in haste to keep up with conversation or to avoid interrupting someone else's laughter. There was no noise, no instructions, no one correcting me or deciding when I could sit. Just me, my plate, and the steady tick of the old wall clock. For the first time in decades, I tasted freedom. I leaned back in my chair, fork resting against the plate, and stared at the window. My reflection looked older than the woman I remembered. Silver hair pulled into a bun, lines across my face like rivers that had carried too many years of silence. But behind the lines, I saw something else. A spark I thought had gone out. That spark whispered, "Enough." Enough of being dismissed. Enough of being reduced to later. Enough of living like a burden in my own family. The words my daughter had spoken, "You'll eat after everyone else," had cracked something in me. But cracks let light through. And through that crack, I suddenly saw the truth. I was still the owner of my life. I thought of Grace, my younger daughter, who had passed 10 years earlier. She had always been gentle, always reminding me that kindness wasn't weakness. Her daughter, Rachel, carried the same softness in her eyes. And it was for Rachel that I knew I had to reclaim myself. I wanted her to see that growing old didn't mean disappearing. I wiped my mouth, finished my tea, and pushed the plate away. Then I pulled out an old notebook from the drawer, the one with a cracked spine and yellowed pages. I opened it to a clean sheet and began to write. Check accounts. Visit the bank. Meet with a lawyer. Review the will. My hand didn't shake as I wrote each item. The list wasn't long, but it carried the weight of a new beginning. Julia thought she had absorbed my life into hers, that I was folded neatly into her household, the way she tucked napkins into rings at her dinner parties. But she had forgotten one thing. My name was still on every document that mattered. My savings were still mine. My decisions were still mine. I went to bed that night with the roast cooling on the counter, my notebook beside me. For the first time in years, I didn't fall asleep replaying old arguments or planning how to keep the peace. I fell asleep with a plan of my own. When the sun rose, I brewed strong coffee, slipped on my coat, and set out. The bank teller looked surprised when I asked to update my accounts, but she complied. Julia's name disappeared from every transfer, every power of attorney. My lawyer, a steady man with glasses perched low on his nose, listened carefully as I explained what I wanted. He nodded, scribbled notes, and helped me draw up a new estate plan. Everything, every penny, every asset, would go to Rachel. Not to punish Julia, but to protect what was left of me. To give it to the one soul who loved me not out of obligation, but out of choice. When he asked what had made me decide, I told him plainly. She told me I'd eat after everyone else. He didn't laugh. He didn't scoff. He just nodded slowly, like a man who'd heard too many quiet betrayals from families that smiled in public, but cut deep in private. Walking home, my steps felt lighter than they had in years. The air seemed sharper, fresher, as though the world itself had been waiting for me to claim my place again. The first sign came quicker than I expected. 3 days after my visit to the bank, Julia showed up on my porch holding a plastic container of cold turkey and mashed potatoes, wrapped in cling film. She smiled the way people do when they want to look kind, but can't quite remember how. "Hi, Mom," she chirped, her voice just a little too bright. "I brought you leftovers." I took the container and set it on the table by the door. "Thank you," I said simply. I didn't invite her in. Her eyes flicked around the house behind me, scanning like a customs officer checking for contraband. "You didn't answer your phone," she said. "I've been calling." "I've been busy," I replied. "Busy with what?" Her laugh was forced, sharp around the edges. "It's not like you have errands anymore. That's why you live with us, remember? So we can help." That word again. Help. She always used it as a leash. I folded my arms. I had errands of my own. Her smile faltered. "What kind of errands?" I looked her straight in the eye, letting the silence stretch until it grew uncomfortable. "Bank errands," I said finally. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe fear. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Bank errands? What do you need at the bank? I thought I handled those things for you." "You used to," I corrected. "Not anymore." The color drained from her cheeks. For the first time in years, I saw her mask slip. The confident daughter, the perfect hostess, the woman who thought she was orchestrating every detail of my life. She cracked. "Mom, I don't understand." "You don't need to," I said. My voice wasn't cruel, just firm. "It's my business again, not yours." Her hands tightened around the strap of her purse. She stood there in silence for a long moment, then tried to recover. "I just want what's best for you," she said softly, slipping back into her role. "You know I do?" I almost believed her. Almost. But then I remembered the roast beef, the laughter around that table, and her voice saying I could eat after everyone else. "I know what's best for me," I told her, "and I'm finally doing it." Her eyes narrowed, her sweetness evaporating. "What did you do, Mom?" she demanded, her voice dropping low, sharp as glass. "Tell me right now." I stepped back into my house, hand resting on the door. "Goodbye, Julia." And I closed it gently in her face. Through the wood, I heard her sharp exhale, the stomp of her heels retreating down the steps. My heart pounded, but not from fear. From freedom. For the first time, I had told her no, and meant it. Julia didn't stay quiet for long. By the weekend, she was back on my porch, but this time she wasn't carrying food. She had a folder in her hand, thick with papers, and her face looked pinched, as if she hadn't slept. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, pushing past me before I could even open the door wide enough. She set the folder on my kitchen table with a heavy slap. "Do you realize what you're doing? Do you realize how dangerous this is?" I raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous?" "Yes." Her voice cracked. "You've always let me handle things. Bills, doctors, the house. I've been managing everything for you. And now suddenly you're... What? Running off to banks and lawyers? Changing things behind my back?" I poured myself a cup of tea, steady and unhurried. "Behind your back?" "Julia, It was never your front to begin with. She flinched, as though the words were sharper than I intended. Her voice softened, but the edge was still there. I just don't want you to be taken advantage of. You're 78, Mom. People prey on women your age. Scammers, greedy lawyers. She leaned in, lowering her tone. Even Rachel. She's young. She doesn't understand money. You can't leave her in charge of everything. That name, Rachel, woke something hot in my chest. My sweet granddaughter, the only one who came by without an agenda, who brought me books and listened to my stories about her mother, Grace. Don't you dare drag Rachel into this, I said quietly. My voice wasn't raised, but Julia sat back like I had pushed her. She's the one person who has never treated me like a burden. She deserves more than you ever offered me. Julia's face darkened. So it's true. You've changed your will. You've cut me out. I took a slow sip of tea. I adjusted my plans, yes. Everything will go to Rachel. She slammed her fist on the table. Mom, you can't do this. I have children too, a husband, responsibilities. Do you think it's fair to just... Fair? I cut her off. Fair is not telling your mother she can eat after everyone else. Fair is not stripping me of my garden, my kitchen, my voice, under the pretense of care. Julia, you've taken from me for years, and when I finally take something back, you call it unfair? Her eyes flashed, wet with angry tears. I was trying to help you. You don't know how hard it is to juggle everything. You think it was easy, letting you move in? Feeding you? Making space? Making space? My laugh was bitter, but quiet. You didn't make space. You made rules, and I followed them because I wanted peace. But peace built on silence is not peace at all. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked. The kettle hissed softly on the stove. Julia stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, searching for words. Finally, she whispered, I can't believe you'd betray me like this. I leaned forward, resting my hand gently on the folder she had slammed onto the table. No, Julia. The betrayal happened long before today. I just finally stopped accepting it. She stood abruptly, snatching the folder, her chair screeching against the floor. You'll regret this, she spat. One day, when you're alone, you'll regret cutting me out. I rose too, slower, steadier. I'd rather be alone on my own terms than surrounded on yours. Her cheeks flushed crimson. She stormed toward the door, muttering something about lawyers and fixing this. The door slammed behind her, rattling the frame. I exhaled, long and shaky, then looked out the window at the small balcony garden I had started. My pots of rosemary and basil swayed gently in the wind, unbothered by storms. For the first time, I realized I was like those plants. I could root anywhere, so long as I was tended with care. And I would tend myself. It was Rachel who told me first. She came over one afternoon, her long hair pulled into a ponytail, carrying a bag of groceries, even though I told her a dozen times not to spend her money on me. She set the bag on the counter, then lingered in the doorway of the kitchen, fidgeting with her sleeve. Grandma, she said carefully, Mom came to see me today. I stopped slicing the apples I'd planned for pie. What did she say? Rachel's eyes flicked to mine, then away. She wanted to know if you've changed things with your accounts, with your will. I put the knife down slowly. And what did you tell her? That I didn't know anything, because I don't. But then Rachel bit her lip. She said you're confused, that you don't know what you're doing anymore. She told me I should try to talk sense into you for your own good. The words stung, but not because they surprised me. Julia had always been skilled at cloaking control and concern. What hurt was that she had dragged Rachel into her game, trying to turn granddaughter against grandmother. I took Rachel's hands in mine. Listen to me, sweetheart. I am not confused. I've never been clearer in my life. Everything I've done with purpose. Her brow furrowed. I know, Grandma. I hate being in the middle. I squeezed her hands gently. You're not in the middle. You're the reason. The reason I finally stood up. Because you deserve to see that being old doesn't mean being erased. Tears welled in her eyes. Mom said you were punishing her, that you don't care about family anymore. I felt my chest tighten, but my voice stayed steady. Family isn't control, Rachel. Family is love, respect, trust. When those things are gone, the word is just decoration. Rachel nodded, wiping her cheeks. I believe you, Grandma. I just wanted you to know what she's saying. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the clean scent of her shampoo, the warmth of her youth. Thank you for telling me. And don't worry, I'll handle this. You don't need to protect me. I'm not helpless. That night, I sat at my table with the notebook still open from days before. I added a new line under my list. Meet with lawyer again. Secure Rachel's trust. The next morning, I went back to Robert's office. He looked up from his desk when I walked in, recognizing something fierce in my face. She's trying to pull Rachel in, I told him. I want to make sure she can't touch a dime meant for her. Robert adjusted his glasses. Then we'll put protections in place. Your daughter won't have any legal claim. Not now, not later. Good, I said. My voice didn't shake. Because Julia could twist words, she could play games, she could slam her fist on every table in town. But she would never again hold the strings to my life or to Rachel's future. The knock came like thunder, 3 sharp raps that rattled the glass in the window. I knew it was Julia before I even opened the door. Her presence had a way of pressing against the air, heavy and insistent. She didn't wait for my invitation. She stormed inside, her heels clicking across the wooden floor like gunfire. Enough, Mom! She snapped, slamming her purse down on the table. We're going to settle this right now. I closed the door calmly and walked back to the kitchen, setting down the teacup I had been holding. What exactly are we settling? Julia spun toward me, eyes blazing. Stop playing games. I know you've been to the bank. I know you've changed things with the lawyer. Rachel told me you're cutting me out. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me? What people will think when they find out my own mother didn't trust me? Her voice cracked, not with grief, but with rage. You're tearing this family apart. I held her gaze, my hands folded neatly in front of me. Julia, the family was torn the moment you told me I could eat after everyone else. That was the night you broke something that can't be mended with excuses. She blinked, momentarily thrown off. That was nothing. A misunderstanding. You're going to blow up everything we built because of one sentence? One sentence, I said softly, is all it takes to show a lifetime of truth. Her lips trembled, but her pride forced them into a sneer. You're old, Mom. You don't understand how the world works anymore. You can't just make rash decisions. You'll regret this. I straightened, letting every ounce of 78 years fill my spine. My voice didn't rise, but it cut clean through her anger. No, Julia. The only thing I regret is teaching you that my silence meant approval. The room went quiet. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hesitate. Julia's eyes darted away, her chest heaving. You think Rachel will thank you for this? She's young, naive. She doesn't know how to handle money or responsibility. You'll ruin her. I stepped closer, my voice low but steady. Rachel will have something you never gave me. Freedom. She'll choose her life without being told when she can sit, when she can eat, or when she can breathe. Julia's face flushed deep red. So that's it? You're just cutting me out of everything? Throwing me away like garbage? I shook my head slowly. No, Julia. I'm finally refusing to let you throw me away. For a moment, her bravado cracked. Her eyes filled with something raw. Maybe hurt, maybe shame. But pride snapped the door shut again. She grabbed her purse from the table, her hands trembling. You'll regret this, Mom. She spat again, her voice smaller this time, almost desperate. You'll regret it when you're alone. I opened the door for her, my hand firm on the knob. Better to be alone with dignity than surrounded without it. She froze, staring at me like she didn't recognize the woman standing before her. Then, without another word, she marched out, her heels echoing down the hall until they vanished into the night. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, my heart pounding. Not from fear, from release. For the first time in years, I had said everything I needed to say. The silence that followed was not empty. It was mine. The days after Julia's outburst felt strangely quiet. Not the heavy kind of quiet that weighs on your shoulders like a wet coat, but the gentle hush that comes after a storm has passed. My little apartment smelled of rosemary from the plant I kept on the balcony. The morning sun poured through the curtains I had chosen myself, casting soft gold across the floor. For the first time in years, I woke up without bracing myself for someone else's demands. I knew Julia wasn't done. Control doesn't surrender easily. But I also knew that her words no longer carried chains. I had unlocked myself. Rachel came by that weekend with a bag of groceries and a grin that belonged to a girl who still believed in tomorrow. She set the bag on the counter, kissed my cheek, and said, "Grandma, it smells so peaceful here." I laughed. "That's because peace has a smell, darling. It's rosemary and lemon soap." We cooked together, side by side, peeling potatoes and telling stories. I told her about her mother, Grace, the way she hummed hymns while folding laundry, the way she cried at sad movies, but always laughed through her tears. Rachel listened with her whole heart, her eyes soft and shining. When dinner was ready, we sat at my little wooden table. Just the two of us. No rules, no, "You'll eat later." We passed the plates back and forth, clinking our glasses of iced tea. And I thought, this is family. Not the size of the table or the noise in the room, but the love between two people who see each other fully. After she left, I took out the folder Robert had prepared for me. The trust documents were all in order. My savings, my assets, every last piece of what was mine, all designated for Rachel, with protections so tight Julia couldn't loosen them with all the lawyers in Ohio. It wasn't spite. It was justice. I sat at my desk and began writing a letter to Rachel. Not the kind of formal note lawyers keep on file, but a grandmother's truth. My dear Rachel, one day you'll open this letter and know that everything I left you was not money, but permission. Permission to live without asking for someone else's approval. Permission to hold your head high, even when others try to press it down. And permission to remember that family should never feel like a cage. I hope you use it for school, or a home, or travel. But most of all, I hope you use it to stay free. I folded the letter, sealed it, and tucked it into the envelope marked with her name. The next morning, Julia appeared again. This time, she didn't barge in. She stood at the threshold, her face pale, her lips trembling. For the first time, she looked less like a conqueror and more like a child caught in her own reflection. "Mom," she whispered. You really did it, didn't you? You've cut me out. I met her eyes steadily. I didn't cut you out, Julia. You cut me out the moment you told me I wasn't worthy to sit at your table. I just finally believed you? She shook her head, blinking back tears. I was stressed. I didn't mean it that way. I don't want to lose you. Her words almost softened me. Almost. But behind them, I heard the same tune she had always played. Regret not for the wound she caused, but for the power she lost. You don't lose me by losing control of me, I said gently. You lost me when you stopped treating me as your mother and started treating me as your burden. She stood in silence, her chest rising and falling. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. This time, I didn't cry. I didn't chase. I closed the door softly, like closing the cover of a book I had already finished reading. My 79th birthday dawned with soft light spilling through my kitchen window. No voices ordering me around, no schedules I hadn't made myself. Just me, my home, and the simple joy of being alive on my own terms. I mixed batter for pancakes the way Walter always liked them, fluffy, with a touch of vanilla. I brewed strong tea and set the table with my favorite plate, the one with the faded blue flowers. This time, no one told me I'd eat later. I sat down and ate first. And it tasted like victory. The phone rang twice. Once it was Julia. I let it ring until it stopped. The second time, it was an old friend from church who sang Happy Birthday off key, but with more love than Julia had shown me in years. I laughed until tears filled my eyes. Later, Rachel arrived with a small cake she had baked herself. She lit a single candle and set it in front of me. Make a wish, Grandma, she said, her voice warm. I closed my eyes. For the first time in my life, I didn't wish for someone else's happiness or for peace in a house that silenced me. I wished for myself, for courage, for dignity, for the strength to keep choosing freedom. When I blew out the candle, Rachel clapped her hands. Then she leaned close and whispered, You taught me something no one else could, that I don't need permission to live my life. Her words were the gift I hadn't known I needed. That evening, after Rachel left, I stepped onto my balcony. The city lights flickered in the distance, but above them stretched a sky wide and free. I let the cool breeze wrap around me, carrying the scent of rosemary and the faint hum of jazz playing softly from the radio inside. I thought about Julia, about the roast beef, about the years of silence I had mistaken for peace, and I realized something. I didn't hate her. I didn't even want revenge. What I wanted, what I had, was freedom. I whispered into the night, I am not invisible. I am not a burden. I am Evelyn Hensley, and I am still here. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They settled into me like roots finding soil. On my 79th birthday, I didn't just mark another year. I marked the beginning of the life that was finally, truly mine.